Hello, and welcome back to part 3 of the series of how a city grows and develops. Today we enter the 20th century and more modernization. So I'm in one of the oldest buildings left on my little city. Jesus. Ugh, okay. Well, but first I need to show you the updates before I continue the story. And I went a little overboard. Look at all the terraced housing everywhere. But But this is reality. It popped up, it went everywhere and anywhere. And this also reminds me, during the 18th century, 19th century, I apologize, a bank system started to become really popular. So a bank's built is what this is. And then I told you in the last episode I was going to build a city hall. Well, here's your city hall. I apologize, it's not straight if anyone has Minecraft OCD. A little unfinished, but it's close enough. Done some minor improvements here and there, like there's actually beds in some places now that never had them. Roads. And you can see it out in the corner there that there's another build that I'm going to come back to in just a moment. But let me make sure I've covered everything. Oh, let me show you inside some of this. I'm just going to show you one of these terrace houses that more in style my original. I did the Blitz video. Basically, there's a living room or a big room downstairs. Then another family will live upstairs. Basically, that's how these three are set up here. Everything else is set up kind of similar. There's actually a few more where there's like a shop. Like one part's just a shop, and then you walk upstairs, and then there's a. Let me find another one. Hold on. Does this one work? Nope. Ah, this one. Okay. I like this place, and this is actually a first for this shop. For shops, it actually has a nice floor, and then they have a house above them. Okay, time to move on. By the early 19th century, a mudraker, sorry. Basically, oh, hold on, I still need to show you the church. While I'm walking there, a muckraker named by the name of Chris Ozinga, no names intended. With no name intended, I shall move on. Writes a report about a disaster that happened at the fact. Writes a book called what am I going to call this book? I forgot now. The City of Albertsville. This is not the name of the city, but it's a cover, and he discusses how 50 people are living in one terraced house, and it's like the factory is doing freaking amazing. Oops, I apologize. I mean, it's doing marvelously well and does not pay their people or anybody any good, actually. And down here, the factory expanded a little bit recently in the storyline, and they now have a warehouse that's connected to their building. And also, I've improved the factory slightly. The chimney stacks are more straight, and now when you actually go down here, it's finished. Yeah, but so now you can basically go in through there. But I'm going to put a year. Something horrible happens to the city. And this is one of the major problems of cities of the of the late 18th and early 19th and 20th centuries. Fire hazards. Especially with this building. Not this building or the bank. This building, a factory. It was very common for machinery to go once the fire starts. And the path that leads up to the warehouse catches fire. And this warehouse, not only storing products, but storing records for business practices, stuff like this. And back then, fire departments were very lousy. So, the factory goes on fire basically right away. Some of this fire is going to go out due to the rain, but generally it works. The fire escapes the confines, and in order to break down something, they they bust into the next door house. Since I actually can't get in, I'm going to bust the floor. And this just happens to be the business next door. So the floor catches fire. Even though bricks are fired often in these times, they're very lately fired, so they're often horrible. So the fire just starts ravaging throughout the area. And by the time even the volunteer fire department arrives, it's already too late. And this one, unfortunately, even the general store is going to get majorly affected. The bank, and not this terrace house either. The fire also, oh Jesus, clear the rain, clear the rain. This is why I wish I could just say like / clear or clear weather, weather. Thank you, clear. And this is another problem of the 19th century and the huge building booms. Is that when they build things, it's often wood and it's built up in a hurry. So basically, as this fire, which I'm going to call the Great Fire of, actually, I would call it Alvarezville ravages and destroys at least the general store and the factory. Meanwhile, at the same time as this fire is raging out of control, one of the business owners are like, I need to build a mansion. So they have a bridge built, and a mansion is built for him, which is this. It's missing the doors, I apologize, I should have built them, but... So they build this nice freaking looking, or nice looking mansion. And they also build something onto it that doesn't become popular with lower classes until much later in the 20th century. A garage. Yep, he owns a car. And this is also the time where, you can actually see the fire from here, where roads are finally starting to improve to concrete and what we now know them as. And it was not uncommon for these fires to destroy terraced houses left and right, even though they were brick. Either due to lousy business practices, sometimes they'd put wood on the foundations. So if a building caught fire, the whole building caught on fire. Fortunately, I can't light a fire in the chimney stack, but you could see it through the chimney stack. But, so basically what happens is this great fire ravages most of town. So basically anything from here all the way to here is completely destroyed. And this is also not a good idea. But it shows you that I built these things. I built them over air. But with this fire, there becomes a serious realization that these terraced houses may not be safe. And when finally the factory business comes around, it's too late. The Mudraker releases, well, the Albertville story. And it's released right in the general store as soon as they fix the floor up. They decide just to temporarily to fix up the building. Because they need to have at least somewhere to buy something and supplies. They bring in some dirt, fill in the holes. Just lay some grass back down quickly. And this is actually very common sometimes for them if there was a fire, just to throw some dirt in, some rubble or something like that, just to level out the ground, so they can reopen a business. And by the way, I apologize. The neighbor downstairs is talking louder than usual. So the place reopened so that people can make their business. But it's soon thought that maybe this policy is not working so well. And the mudrucker, Chris Ozinga, realizes, publishes the story. Well, I'm making the fire a little bit because the reason it keeps going out. Maybe, I don't think the roof would cause that. But it's really unfortunate. As you can see, because the fire destroys most terraced houses. In fact, most damage like this would not be seen again. At least till the 1940s in England when the Blitz happened. But check out that video for more information. So, with the fire ravaged and the realization that the factory system may be a tad bit broken, it's decided that maybe it's time to have some rethinking done. What the hell? Or sorry, what the heck? And also, while this is raging fire is going on, I thought that the rain must have knocked it out. At the same time, the gunk that this factory has been throwing out for years, I'm gonna break it catches fire. Citizens, while cleaning up the factory because they want to get back to work, see that the water is just on fire. And this is a common story, and in fact, it's a well-known story because around where I live, there was a great river fire in 1969. Why do people want to know about your prescription? Jesus. Anyway, hopefully, I know he needs it badly. But, so basically, with the damages realized, the government finally steps in and ends the laissez-faire, or hands-off policies that they had. They order an immediate, they start enacting laws that are now quite famous. One of them is, you've probably heard of it, the Sherman Antitrust Law. It comes around this period, and this is designed to break up monopolies, or trusts, as they were known back then. Basically, monopolies where somebody has total control over something. So in this case, the monopoly here is that the factory owns all these houses and businesses. Well, yeah, you can see some of the secrets. I'm going to make a behind-the-scenes video after this, by the way, showing how I built these things, stuff like that. So with the government finally getting unhands-off or un-laissez-faire, they get the government and City Hall to realize that we need to break down these walls and get control back. So the government, and I apologize if now I'm repeating, they put in the Sherman Antitrust Law, stuff like that, to break up this trust that the factory has. And what happens is, also around the early 19th century, a building developer buys up all these burnt out buildings. From here, we'll buy up from this corner here to this road, all the way back to, they buy from the factory up to this smokestack here. So basically the factory closes, and they buy all the way up to here, where this terrace, oh sorry, hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. I am sorry, I did not mean to, I did that incorrectly. So what happens is, they buy this, the factory, and they buy all the way up to these old terrace houses. They buy them up and tear it all down. Be right back. While these old buildings are demolished, the building developer makes a shocking news development. He announces that he's building something called a skyscraper. And yes, you are hearing me correctly, a skyscraper. And that's one of the biggest things of the 20th century, was the rise of skyscrapers. They were starting to be built by the late 1800s, but they were only like 5 stories, and they weren't like the Chrysler Building, the Empire State. They weren't like that yet. And this building developer has big plans. He's gonna, with all the land he's bought up, he's bought all, sorry, my bad. He's gonna go from, I'm gonna do some land reclaiming. He's gonna go from here, out here, around the factory, up to here. He's gonna demolish these, and this general store, and this store, to build what will be the largest skyscraper in this whole entire state. And what's going to happen is, as these buildings go down, these people will get displaced. So they end up moving into the other terraced houses and the church that are still left from this era. Oh, and also, when I tear this down, I'm going to keep the wall in place for the factory. But the factory also realizes that now that their warehouse is basically destroyed, they need to tear it down. So at the same time, they order any papers that are left to be rescued from the demolition crews, and then they start demolition of the extension and factory and the pathway that led to the. This is also the start of the downfall for the factory system. By the middle of the 1900s, jobs in America especially start to die off. Factory jobs start to die off like wildfire. So when you come back, the rest of these things that need to be demolished will be demolished, and the rest of the things that are needed to, and I'll show you the plans. While starting to demolish the warehouse, they discovered that, something survived. And they left this part of the whole warehouse. The rest is demolished. And that little bit stays. I'm just going to go through that way. Some more of this. When I actually come back, you'll see it's all gone. By the way, if you're curious, the warehouse that was behind the wall, covered up, it's this. It's nothing, but story mode. So, while the workers were demolishing the building, they accidentally demolished a portion of a wall that had been sealed off for years. After they demolished the wall, they went inside to see what was inside. It turns out there was a bunch of records that had survived. Turns out the brick wall had blocked out the fire from hitting this area. And it turns out the whole rest of that warehouse was just storage for paper and product that the factory made. All the records were safe. But as these records are still owned by the factory, they weren't allowed to demolish that little bit of the building. So what happened is the demolitioners borrowed a door that was dead. That was on one of the old terraced houses over here, smack down to the side of the building. So now there's a door officially then. They can now get into the record office. And here's what I've gone up to. So again, quick reminder, he buys all the way around, even the factory. Up to here, and this is next to come down. But while we're here, I want to explain what this stuff was. This was a business. But there was also a house above it, and that's why there's a bed there. And then this was just a house, or this was a two house. Hence why you can see a bed here. Oh, jeez. This is probably over. Yeah, it's over. There's a room above us. Oh, and by the way, if you're curious, if you ever wanted to get this rolled, I'll show you the seed. And then you can just, I'll give you some context clues on where some things were. Or you can see on my position that this is where stuff will be. And also the general store. Even though they temporarily rebuild this, a new store will open in an area long forgotten over here. But that won't come till a little later in the part 4, actually. I'm going to make this a 4th because this 20th century is a little more historically important to cities than like the 19th century. But I will be right back once these, at least this, all the way up to the general store is demolished. So now here's the terraced houses are now gone. All that's left is the general store. And with this, at the same time as the residents here at the city general store and most of the other stores in the area have just suddenly shuttered up, they realize, oh no, we need another store. And a business named Kmart sees a good idea. And we're going to call this like the first Kmart here. Where they decide, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll buy up this little plot next to the church. In front of the church. We'll buy that up. So they buy up these three house businesses. One business, two houses, respectively. And this is supposed to be a house, by the way. Let me start off. But what this Kmart ultimately doesn't know is that one of the buildings they bought to put a new store in was over 100 years old. But they go along anyway, and they tear that house down. They tear the old building down. And by the way, now there's only one building left from when I originally started this series, and it's this house right here. The reason why this house has been spared is due to the fact that it was also being temporarily used as the mayor's office while that was still being built. And while that burns, I'm going to work on this. Now, before I forget, here's an Easter egg alert. So if you're wondering why I was using black glass, it's actually a reference to that often this air was so smoke, black, stuff like that in factory-like cities that windows were said to be black. Not clear, not gray, not white, just black. And I'll be back once this is done. In part 4, we will continue with the 20th century.